Nukes. Happy Monday, Nukes. Welcome to my lair. My new YouTube in studio after hours, of course, because I am here at work. But for those that saw my short here, 30 minutes ago, I have decided I'll no longer be doing videos from my truck. YouTube shorts, going live, doing this type of stuff, whatever you want to call it. I'm serving arguably the safest industry in the world, being nuclear. I don't feel that it's, I don't want to say appropriate. It's just not wise, right? Doing it from my truck. Whether I'm staring at the camera the whole time or I'm not looking at all, but I'm still directing dialogue attention to you all. I want to be completely focused, A, B, safe as can be, and C, you know what? I've got paper. No, I got a lot going on in my office. I think I'll be more effective here for my average Joes, my nuclear average Joes. So, happy Monday. Hope you all had a nice weekend. Today I want to talk about the public misconception and, quite frankly, misunderstanding on the cost of nuclear energy, building a new power plant. We're probably not going to dive into the fuel and what have you, not right this second. I'm trying to actually get out of here at a reasonable time. When I say get out of here, I mean go home. And I do live in Stuart, Florida, and it's about a 30-minute drive. So regardless, I'm here for you all. So I want to dive into it. I've heard some wild numbers out there. And surprisingly enough, all you got to do is Google it. But Mike, these things are going to cost, $50 billion. I don't want to be held accountable to pay for it. Well, I ain't got $50 billion, and I also don't want to be held accountable necessarily to pay for something that I'm not specifically buying. So I get that. Cool. Let's back up though. $50 billion, what's going on there? Where are you getting that number from? Well, yeah, it took 30 plus years and $50 billion to build those plants in Georgia. They all cost that much. I just don't think, I think that's why we don't build anymore, actually. Okay, well, you've got a lot to learn because, sure, Vogtle is the plant they're referring to, or the plants, reactors. Vogtle Unit 3 and 4 is exactly what they're referring to, and I want to say the cost was roughly $36 billion over a course of 20 some odd years. Arguably close to 30, close. There were some issues there. I think there were tons of lessons learned by the industry, by the regulator, by financial institutions, by a lot of individuals, a lot of organizations, and what have you. Unfortunately, I don't feel the general public has really been informed that nuclear power, to this day, should and can cost anywhere from $6 to $9 billion. Let me repeat that. Not $69 billion, but $6 to $9 billion. Overnight CapEx, construction, overall costs being factored in, not necessarily factoring in financing and what have you, but let's just say the price tag here, like you do when you go to when you buy a house, when you get a mortgage, right? Or when you go and buy a car, this is what we're gonna charge you. Sure, financing comes into play when financing is needed. I don't have $9 billion laying around, and no, you can't have it. Now, if you want to build an SMR in my backyard, bankrupt me, baby. Take all my money. And I'm being dead serious, not even joking. But these, whether they're utilities or what have you, they have to go and ensure that they're not spending a ton of their on-hand cash. So there's a portion and an aspect of financing that is certainly involved, but let's move past that. These nuclear power plants also don't have to take 30 years to build. They don't. They do not. Quite frankly, they shouldn't take 10 years to build. There's some factors there too. And for the sake of this, we're talking broadly, right? Let me factor in, and I say broadly meaning advanced nuclear and what we currently have in the fleet, legacy light water reactor nuclear. Vogtle, you wouldn't call legacy because they're brand new reactors, and they are the U.S.'s first AP1000 reactors, which you're welcome, Westinghouse, for this compliment, but it's the Cadillac. I owned a Cadillac. The engine blew up on it. Let's not use that. It's the Mercedes-Benz, baby. It's the granddaddy of nuclear power plants. The design, the technology behind it. It's not the same light water reactor or BWR or PWR that they built in the 70s. It's not. It is technologically more sound. It is bigger. They're bigger. Massive units. But they are beautiful, efficient, strong nuclear reactors. It shouldn't take 10 years to build these. Let me help cure some of that misconception on Vogtle in particular, and then we're going to kick off. We're going to dive right in, and I'm going to try to wrap this up in 5 minutes, I promise. I should have said no promises, but let's try 5 minutes. So this should take a few minutes. 1996, okay? Let's talk about some things that happened from when they started plans and started construction to when they finished. You had Y2K, right? You had the year 2000. I was 9 years old when we transitioned from the 90s to the 2000s that we're currently in. I was just a young boy. So I couldn't tell you the sentiment of the market, couldn't tell you what the S&P looked like or the Dow looked like for that day, but obviously I can Google it and see the history of it. But I can tell you it was borderline a black swan event. Google what that term means. I'm not an economist. I am a nuclear average Joe, not a financial average Joe or economy average Joe. So go Google what a black swan event is. But borderline, arguably, one can call that a black swan event. And then shortly after that, a year later, a little over a year later, a day in which we will never forget happened. 9/11, right? The market shut down that morning. That day, the next day as well. I think, and forgive me, I was 11 years old when that happened, so I don't remember exactly, and I don't Google the information I necessarily want to share with you. Black swan event, to say the least. Terrible day in U.S. history, let alone in the around the globe, right? We can all agree to that. Then you had years of war in the Middle East. It was basically the entire globe against terrorism, and we were the we're at the spearhead of that invasion, meaning when it comes to forward operating bases, when it comes to just boots on the ground, troops, aircraft carriers, aircraft in general, weapons, equipment, everything. U.S. spent a lot of money. Okay, call it a black swan event if you want. I don't know if that really it really doesn't categorize as one, but then you had the financial crisis of 07 and 08. Black swan event. Big time event that affected the entire economy. Then you had an extremely black swan, horrible crisis occur in Japan, 2011. Fukushima directly impacted the nuclear industry in a bad way, if that isn't obvious. All right, so then you have, I'll give us the benefit of the doubt. Then you had a few years, not even a decade, of a normal time, I guess, potentially, if one wants to call it that, in the U.S., until COVID happened. So now you have to go home. Go home, but build this thing on time, by the way. Keep it under costs. You have milestones, we have milestones, whatever. Go home. Oh, and return to work, though, as soon as possible, right? I mean, let's not forget that Vogel went through a lot of crap that it couldn't necessarily control. No one can control it, I guess. Bad actors, maybe, and for some of those black swan events. But, man, cut him some slack. Southern Co., you're also welcome for this video. Cut Vogel some slack. Not easy to get anything done on time at that magnitude, because call it a mega CapEx project here in the U.S. or a mega construction project. You've got all those things weighing against you. It's not easy. So yeah, excuses. I hate excuses as a leader for my organization, as a parent. I hate excuses, but damn it, there's factors that you have to consider, right? So let's consider those factors. Sure, it was built with an overrun budget, overrun deadline. I mean, doom and gloom. At the same time, there's folks there are actual nukes, baby. Big time nukes that if they're watching this, tuning in, they're yelling right now saying, Mike, don't forget about the other factors, which I'm not going to dive into it right now. I'm not necessarily an expert in any of those other factors, quote unquote, but bureaucracy could be one. Bad actors from foreign entities could be another. Influencing the wrong thing, right? Maybe some anti-nuke coming from adversaries that held some things up. I don't know. I'm not going to dive into it. Those bad actors, by the way, some adversaries of ours, of the U.S., still exist and still push anti-nuclear propaganda. Anyway, the cost for building a nuclear power plant, the upfront costs are expensive. There's no doubt. You get what you pay for. I'm going to start with that. Keep in mind, 60 to 70% of the overall costs of the plant itself to build over a lifetime. Build, run, maintain, operate. It comes from the construction, right? The CapEx of constructing, commissioning this plant, building it and turning it on. We're live, baby, right? It's like a sin these days to say it for me. But decommissioning, folks don't realize, average Joes don't realize, average Joes and Janes don't realize that it is expensive as hell to decommission a nuclear power plant. It's a lot of money, in the billions, okay? But once you get it going, once you get the interest paid down on that mortgage, right, for that plant, folks don't realize how profitable a nuclear power plant really truly is. It goes back to the Mercedes-Benz theory. Like, I couldn't speak to a 2025 Mercedes-Benz if I went and bought one today. That, oh yeah, historically, right? Because this is true. Historically, a Mercedes-Benz, I've got a buddy that he drove that sucker to like 250,000 miles, okay? Now, we're not using mileage in consideration with nuclear power plants because that wouldn't make sense, but nuclear power plants, on average, are built to last, baby. They're built to last for a long time. Very long time. One could argue, this is not a fact. I'm not saying this is a fact, but one could argue that you can keep those puppies going for 100 years. On average, they're initially, so when a nuclear power plant is built, it's licensed for 40 years initially. They almost always get relicensed as long as there isn't some state ruling about or against, I guess, a state ruling in regards to banning nuclear, right? Or deciding that, hey, our current plant, we don't want to extend its life. Let's be honest, and just so you're aware, and again, I hate this subject of it, but we've decommissioned some nuclear power plants here in the U.S. I don't want to say necessarily recently, but yeah, in the last 20, 30 years. And they've considered it for economic purposes. Listen, these things are profitable. The operations and maintenance to run it are extremely low. You have to build out transmission and distribution for just about any and all power generation forms out there, right? There's certain cases of cogeneration and what have you. I'm not going to dive into all that and the meaning behind it, but there's a lot of comparison to renewables and the cost of renewables. And yeah, the upfront costs, Mike, it's so cheap. It is. But I go back to, you get what you pay for. There's misconception about the levelized cost of energy for solar. And the acronym there, it's LCOE. Google it. You'll be interested by this because I want to say in the U.S., I know this for almost a fact, $98 per kilowatt hour for nuclear. And I want to say it's like 46, 48 per megawatt hour for solar. Mike, that's a big spread, man. Like that's a significant spread. Talking per megawatt hour. We'll dive into more on how that works. This isn't necessarily the economics of nuclear. Dr. David Ruzick does it best. YouTube that for my average Joes out there. Dr. David Ruzick, professor. Don't believe he's a professor now. I think he retired, but professor at the University of Illinois, has a great piece on nuclear economics. Anyway. call it $46 per megawatt hour. The misconception there is they're not factoring the interconnect costs that it takes for those, example, solar farms in the middle of nowhere. They also don't consider that it's 48 or whatever I said, $46 per megawatt hour. But during what time? Non-peak times? Non-peak hours? Meaning when everyone's at work, sun's out, it's collecting all that nice, beautiful energy. And then all of a sudden, sun's not out, don't have the best storage for this, so we're kind of out of juice. We need some backup. Literally, we need some backup power. There's a cost associated with going from one power source to another. That's not factored into the levelized costs, okay? Let's also consider that when you invest in nuclear power, when you invest in an NPP, okay, you're not just investing in, a gigawatt or 1,100 megawatts of clean, beautiful energy. Did I say clean? I did say clean, didn't I? You're not just investing in clean energy, although you are certainly investing in the clean energy when you go nuclear, but industrial heat and district heat. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole, but I will do another episode on, let's call it the outside benefits of nuclear, because I'm going to rattle through some, but I'm not going to elaborate necessarily. But industrial heat purposes, meaning specialty chemical, refinery, oil and gas, baby, like that's industrial heat. Those applications, right? We'll call those applications, they require a large amount of heat to manufacture their product per se, right? District heat is, it's still heat, but it might not be the bajillion temperature, the melting temperature type of heat that we're talking about for industrial. But, maybe instead of living in sunny South Florida, I'm living in cold New York City. Say it's the wintertime, because it's probably not that cold right now, but you can take, again, rabbit hole, you can take, let's just say nuclear energy, you can take what that NPP is doing, and it's cool science behind it, but you can translate the heat being generated from from fission, from the chain reaction, high heat, very high heat. You can take that and turn it into lower heat, right? But enough to heat and warm a district, right? An entire university, an entire office building, a skyscraper, a city like Manhattan that needs heat a lot of times out of the year to keep people warm inside their homes. You can use nuclear power to do that. And not just to power the thermostat either. Again, I divulge. Desalinization. What does that mean? That means, again, not diving down the rabbit hole, but Google NuScale and what they're going to do with clean water and how they're going to do it. The technology exists. We can do it with we can do it with a lot of what we actually have now. Obviously, applications need to go in place, but folks, what I'm getting at is you can take salt seawater, okay, and you can convert it into clean water, drinking water, usable water that you couldn't use it for because of the salt content. Amazing stuff, right? hydrogen production. Let's talk about that. Let's not rabbit hole it, but let me just give you kind of a scenario. You can use what's called, it's something called electrolysis. You can take that technology and create hydrogen because of the nuclear power that is being produced at a commercial nuclear power plant. And in turn, you can take that hydrogen and turn it into green hydrogen. And all of a sudden, you can use that hydrogen as fuel for an aircraft. Whoa. Much more than just lights and power, right? Lastly, medical isotopes. This is where I'm certainly not an expert in. Shout out to ASP isotopes and BWXT. We're talking about Molly 99, baby. Look into CANDU, the CANDU reactors, and what Ontario Power Group, OPG, Bruce Power, look into what they're doing, what they're able to do with their nuclear technology, because we do not have CANDU as a type of reactor. We do not have those reactors here in the United States. In turn, Canada, it's the only type of reactors they have, which are CANDU reactors. Not going to go into the difference, but you can take a nuclear power plant, a commercial nuclear power plant that is producing clean, beautiful energy, and there's technology behind that that will also produce medical isotopes for cancer treatment. Rare medical isotopes that we are forever learning about and improving and evolving, and it is getting very fascinating out there with how we're doing it. But you could take that and essentially use it as another application. So when you talk about costs of nuclear power, folks, I'm not here to tell you it's the cheapest thing to build. Joke's on you. You thought it was expensive? Nah, it's cheap. Come on. No, I'm not here to be unrealistic. Am I biased? Yeah, right. I'm biased. Everything I just laid on you were all facts. The nuclear average Joe doesn't make things up, okay? Everything I laid on you is facts, and is it expensive? Yes. Is it worth it? Oh my goodness. Absolutely. We should have been building more and more and more and never stopped. Mike, that doesn't help. That doesn't help make me feel better necessarily about it not costing $36 billion like Vogel did. Well, I can understand that. I can't agree because, again, I laid out some key factors, call them black swan events, that you just can't battle through hard enough for it to not affect you, okay? But folks, that's it. I'm not sitting here saying that it's not going to cost billions of dollars. It certainly is. For these advanced reactors, it's going to cost billions of dollars, and we got to figure out how we're going to have a sustainable fuel for that reactor, fuel supply chain. Not necessarily let me back that up. The supply chain for the fuel of this bad boy or these bad boys is obviously important, because what is a 2025 E-Class Mercedes-Benz sitting in my driveway worth to me if it's got no gas in the gas tank to drive? It's worthless. So sure, fuel is definitely important. There is an aspect to fuel that You know, there's a cost factor to it, but that can't hold us back, folks. You invest in a workhorse when you invest in a nuclear, and I'm not talking about you buying stocks or what have you. I am talking about you going to, you know, maybe NRC public hearings in your neighborhood, listening about the plans of building future nuclear in your town. Invest into that. Invest into those conversations, those meetings. Understand it, support it ultimately, right? Because you're getting clean, sustainable, beautiful, clean energy for decades, right? You're getting it for longer than any other power source out there. Facts. I go back to some of these plants. Word on the street, I'll say it, because I don't want it to come out as Mike Dean says that they're going to. The nuclear average Joe claims, you know, Calvert Cliffs is going to last for 100 years from now. No, I'm not saying that. I'm not saying it's not impossible either, because I'm not a nuclear engineer. But what I am is embedded into this industry and have learned enough that 40 years is just a start. These things can last for a very long time. What does that mean? That means that big price tag doesn't become such a big price tag after it's all paid for. Something to relate to if you own a house and you have a big mortgage right now, when you pay the house off, and essentially when you pay that interest lower and lower if you're doing it the right way, your mortgage payments can get cheaper and cheaper. It's true. Then all of a sudden you pay your mortgage off. What does that mean? It means you're mortgage free. When these plants are financed and the financing is paid off, there's room for these things to be more profitable than cheap natural gas, folks. Cheap natural gas. The general public wouldn't know that, right? Let's take some time to research even more. Take this video and use this as a starting point of how do I understand why nuclear is cost effective. I'm not going to say it's cheaper, right? That would be misleading for this entire video. But why it's cost effective. The misconceptions on why people think it costs so much money when, yeah, there is a very good example. Mike, there's a great example of why we think it costs so much money. Okay. Then listen to this video and take into consideration some of the factors that led to the cost. Not all of them. And folks, who's to say that, God forbid, we don't have issues or factors outside levers being pulled that would affect directly or indirectly new power plants. That's life, right? That could happen anywhere. That can happen to any type of mega cap construction project, whether that be domestically here in the U.S. or overseas. But folks, we're going to run out of lights and electricity eventually. We need a base load of power, which is not renewables. We need gigawatts of power. Folks, it's not a solar farm. It's not a single wind turbine. It could be. You know, you keep looking at the damn LCOE or levelized cost of energy. Yeah, wow, it's cheap, and wow, look at the capacity. Look how much it could put out in terms of energy. Could. Well, folks, the sun's not out all the time, and the wind doesn't always blow. I don't want to rely on outside elements for if and when I got to turn my power off at 7 p.m. because my local grid is jammed up. It's simple economics when you take it into consideration of stable, dependable, reliable power. Everything else is extra. The heat application, seawater, the hydrogen, all that's extra. Let's just take it for what it is. I want reliable power. Nuclear is that source of reliable power. You get what you pay for. It's not cheap, but man, it's the best. Yeah, I can keep going on, but at the end of the day, folks, certainly appreciate anyone tuning in here, although this isn't a live video. I did think it was live for a second. Joke's on me. But thank you for tuning in. Feel free to leave any questions or concerns or just comments in general down below. Let's keep this conversation going. I want to hear concerns. Maybe I'm missing some. I don't think I am. I think it's more on the what am I getting when I really think about the investment of nuclear power. And again, unless it's being built in your backyard, the investment of nuclear power, it's just the buying effect, folks. We need more sentiment from the general public. I remember I had friends of mine touting about FPL, my utility, trying to sell them solar panels, and they got hooked on it. EVs, they got hooked on the idea of what a great investment this is for logistics, for me getting from point A to point B, but the environment, and the cost, and folks, it all factors in. It's just the lights that we're so used to flicking on when we walk in the house. We don't really consider where it's coming from necessarily, how much it costs to get there. And hey, how long are they going to stay on for? But we really should. If we're going to be concerned about it when it comes to the car I'm driving or the panel I'm going to put on top of my house, why not take the extra step to learn about the power the power being transmitted to your local neighborhood and where it might be coming from? The cost to get it there, the dependency of it going there, right? That's what we're getting at. Folks, it's been a pleasure. I'm tired. Nuclear Average Joe out, baby. I should do one more. Maybe a short, probably a short. One more video, but I do want to remind all of you I am blessed and honored, privileged, a lot of words I can say, but I have an opportunity to sit down with Mr. Mike Butler, the host of Gone Fission podcast, on July 24th. It will be broadcasted. I couldn't tell you exactly when, but I am ready, and I'm ready to dive in with the experts, if warranted, if embraced, which it sounds like it's getting there. And I'm ready to be the average Joe that my fellow average Joes and Janes need when it comes to nuclear. You have your nuclear average Joe here, folks. I'm fully committed to it. We're growing. But folks, the goal here is grow your minds. Be more open-minded. Couple things to cite real quick. Dr. David Ruzick. YouTube, go check him out. I am one of the biggest fans out there, and quite frankly, he's inspirational to me because he was able to, and I'm going to divulge it, but Mr. Mike Butler, the host of Gone Fission podcast, and of course my wonderful organization, Oxford Global Resources, where we are providing professional services of engineers on a contract basis, deep into the nuclear industry. So, folks, again, thank you so much for coming. Give me a like, give me a subscribe. That'd be great. But if anything, take away from some of this: nuclear power, the cost is worth it, the investment's worth it. Let's expand it. Let's believe in it. Let's talk about it. Get vocal. And have yourself a wonderful Monday evening. Tune in next time. Go nuke, baby. Let's go.